Sully Finlay was an accountant at Salesforce when he stepped into an improv comedy class and discovered his passion for comedy. Shortly after, he found himself creating hilarious content that has since totaled hundreds of millions of views and taken him from dabbling in content on the side to becoming a full-time comedian and content creator. In this episode of the Rhizomes podcast, we discuss the ins and outs of his pivot, the hardships of juggling full-time work with a growing side project, and the rather surprising advantages of an accounting background in creative spaces like comedy. My favorite part was that I got to laugh quite a bit during our conversation. I hope you enjoy, and I highly recommend joining Sully's hundreds of thousands of followers on Instagram, TikTok, or even LinkedIn. Thanks for tuning in. Having been watching your content for so long, even just engaging with you, I'm so self-conscious about like not saying low-hanging fruit or circle back or not being too cliche. So yeah, I'm just wondering if that happens to you with people these days.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, all the time. Including like definitely on calls, people are like, "Oh, I'm afraid of being this like meetings character that you do a lot," and like saying these different things. Sometimes if somebody like comes up to me at like a bar or a restaurant or somewhere out in the wild, and it's just like, I had one the other day where somebody was like, "Yeah, I could tell it was you by the way you said right," and then I'm self conscious about how I'm saying the word right.
Oh, wow.
So I always say to people too, it goes both ways where like I will then get self-conscious on a meeting or talking to somebody, just like small talk kind of thing that I would normally do as a bit. So yeah, it definitely goes both ways.
When in your content journey did you start have people like run into you and reach out and I don't know, like kind of recognize your celebrity or yeah.
I think celebrity is generous. If it's the word celebrity, I'd put it in like size 2 font.
Okay.
No, I appreciate that. I think probably I had a video maybe a year and a half into it, so a while, that was about living in the city during winter. So I'm in Chicago, and so it kind of resonated with, I think, with people in larger cities. And around that time, there were more people that started being like, "Hey, are you the guy who did this video or whatever?" A lot of times it's just be like, "Hey, you're on TikTok," and I'm like, "Yeah." Am I just supposed to confirm? Like, I like having like a conversation with people. That's fun,
Yeah.
and getting to hear their story. But those are always funny. But yeah, I'd say a little bit into it for sure.
I imagine that like doesn't happen as an accountant.
No, it does.
Yeah.
It does not. I always say like whenever somebody is asking your job, and if you're an accountant, if there's a room full of people and say you're next to 2 other people in a circle, they'll ask the first person to be like, "Hey, what do you do for work?" And they're like, "Project management." And they're like, "Oh, okay." And they go back and forth for a little bit. Next person, "Hey, what do you do?" "I'm in marketing." "Cool." They go back and forth a little bit. They get to the third person. They're like, "Hey, what do you do?" "I'm an accountant." Next person, like
Yeah.
they do not want to hear. Everyone's like, "We know what accountants do. We don't need to hear more here."
Yeah, it kind of reminds me of there's those memes or whatever of
Yeah.
I think like Obama giving high fives to people, and then there's like
Yeah.
some people who he kind of like just handshakes,
Yeah.
and then there's like the full on
Totally.
real hug. Yeah, so
100%. Yeah.
yeah, so like, did you dream to be an accountant, or was that like long term goal that you had earlier on in life?
Yeah. I knew like probably halfway through high school, I wanted to be an accountant. So my dad was also a CPA early in his career. And then now it's in business and now it's teaching. And I, halfway through high school, took a couple different accounting classes and just really clicked with my brain. And honestly, I still really like accounting. I've kept my CPA and everything because you never know. But I then studied accounting in school. Um, got my CPA, was in it for 7 years, and I liked it. It was one of those things where whenever I was talking about my career long term and what I was aspiring to, I would say like, "Oh, by X age, I want to be a controller, and then a CFO, and then whatever." But I never felt like a passion towards it. It just felt like that was the thing to say because all my friends were saying that. But I did like it. I do still even like accounting, and it's even helpful now. Like running the business side of content, to have that background for sure.
Yeah, I imagine, because I don't know, like as a non content creator, I mean, I guess I am somewhat of a content creator, but like as a non
Totally. Yeah.
comedian,
That's kind of,
yeah. But when I think about like comedy, as a general citizen of the world, like I think about the glory and the funny parts and the playful and all
yeah.
of that. But I do wonder. given that you have so much tolerance for detail and things that require more repetition from accounting,
Mm.
what is the like more mundane part of being a comedian?
um, yeah, that's a great question. It's a lot of the kind of like admin stuff of specific to content. It's probably editing more than anything. Now there are parts of that that can be creative, but it's probably the least creative part. And a couple months ago, I hired an editor for partially that very reason. And it's like, this is something I just don't engage with as much, and you're honestly better at this than I am. And so that's been great. But I'd say any of the, even if you're going back and forth with a theater on like booking a show or talking with a brand about different like content things, some of those conversations are really engaging, but some of it's like, hey, can you change the caption or things like that that just aren't super,
Yeah.
exciting, or it's not like I'm writing some joke I'm really excited about. Um, so it's just kind of the more, yeah, admin type stuff that's more mundane.
Okay, interesting.
Yeah,
And yeah, I guess I'm jumping around a little bit, but
sure.
I'm curious about like your upbringing. So you had mentioned that you grew up where your dad is an accountant, so you had
Yeah,
that type of influence or exposure to that profession.
yeah.
On the more comedic side, like were you a funny kid growing up?
That's a good question. I've always been pretty shy. Even now, I'd consider myself more one introverted and two not super outgoing, except for like with people I know, kind of thing. And as a kid, though, my has told me, like even at like 3 or 4 years old, I would reach a point in the evening where I would just get really silly, and that kind of just continued until, well, I mean, it's honestly still ongoing, which might need to be checked out. But
Yeah, I should have
I,
probably scheduled this for the evening then.
yeah, I'd be killing right now. No,
Yeah.
no, I also then reach a point where I just hit a wall and crash hard.
Yeah.
Uh, but in college, it would still be a thing. So 20 years later, and my friends would call it Sully time, where it's like around probably 10 o'clock at night. They're just like, yeah, Sully's going to be like weird and an idiot for like 2 hours now. So it's kind of always been like that. But no, I was pretty. I've always been silly, and that's where I feel most myself. But I've also felt pretty, I'd say like quiet as a kid. But both my parents, I would say, are like goofy in their own ways. So I think there's a little bit of that influence. But yeah,
Yeah, cool. So, first of all, I cannot help myself, and that this is probably like gonna land very poorly. But Sully and silly, was that ever was that ever a pun as a kid or no?
um, no, I don't think that's a great question. Yeah, there's branding potential there.
Yeah.
I uh, I think sometimes if I'm saying one too quickly, I accidentally say the other. Like I'll say silly instead of Sully or silly instead of silly. Um, but that's probably the closest to that I've gotten. Yeah,
Okay, cool. Yeah.
yeah,
So you were talking about like being introverted to an extent.
yeah.
So I know that a lot of your work requires, I mean, like a lot of satire is about
Mhm.
being observant and paying attention
Yeah,
to certain character behaviors and other people.
yeah,
Um, do you, yeah, how do you explain your ability to do that and your like acuity about other people's body language or quirks or whatever that is?
yeah. Oh, it's such a good question. I would say it's one of those things that I think is part nature and part nurture. I don't want to sit here and be like, I don't know, I just do it. Uh,
Yeah.
but, I think it's part nurture too, of just like, probably being more introverted, where you're just like, oh, you're just kind of observing and seeing what's going on with different people. And, um, I know different comedians who have said like, you just kind of see the thing that's out there in the world and just like, oh, that's different. And then the next thought is like, what's funny about that, or and it's kind of subconscious, like it just kind of happens. But I don't know, I think each career path I've been on, both accounting and comedy, have required probably more than anything observation. Especially early in my accounting career, I was an auditor, and that's all observation and just being like, where is this company committing fraud?
Mm.
Uh, or just where are they like, doing well or not well, more simply,
Yeah.
and more often. But in comedy too, it's just okay, what is it about this conversation that we have in day-to-day life that's funny, or what is it about this certain type of person that I can create a character from? But yeah, it's kind of both.
Were there specific like moments during your accounting career where you started to recognize that there's some gold comedy that could come out of this, or like amazing content that you could bring out of it? Like, were you already
Oh
doing
man.
that subconsciously before it became a tangible like content? I'm just wondering how that
Yeah,
started.
i I wouldn't say it was that so much. I would joke around a lot, but again, kind of getting back to the being like shyer thing, I find this a lot of times where I have been in different groups of people. So say at like my first job, where I'm probably for a couple months like pretty quiet and I just want to get my work done and do as well as I can at the job. And then it reaches a point where I get to know people better. And once I get to know people better, I want to like just be really goofy and joke around a lot. And I remember one time at my job sitting in my cubicle, and I hear on the other side of the cubicle is one of my coworkers talking to another coworker. And she is just saying, and I'm hearing this whole conversation. She's like, yeah, like Sully's kind of funny. And I'm like hearing this whole thing, and I'm like, I mean, one, thank you. This is so kind. But then in partway through, she's like, "Wait, is he up here?" And I was like, "Yeah." I feel like that kind of thing happens a decent amount. But no, I would like joke around in the office and stuff. But it wasn't until in 2020 my like big like great reset hobby was improv.
Okay.
And so I first took an improv class, and that got me into comedy. And then I got way into it because I was just like, "Oh, this is what I've been looking for." And um, at that point, then it was kind of the thought of one, yeah, what's funny, I guess, in the work setting, but more than anything, like, how do I do this like full time?
Mm.
Is there a path there to do it? And so, um, yeah, it was kind of more thinking about the job part of it than it, and like the jokes just kind of came versus like kind of thinking like, oh, this is what I'll write, at least to start.
Could you share a little bit more about starting improv? I think I read a little bit about it being maybe
Yeah.
related to Second City or something, but would love to hear
Yeah.
more. Yeah.
Sure. Um, so 2020, I was living in Indianapolis, and I'm somebody who likes to just tinker and try to find like different hobbies that I'm interested in, and I'm kind of just always trying to like I think learn different things. Yeah, I don't know. It's just fascinated me, and so I tried a couple different things of like, is this the thing? Whereas like I tried learning guitar, and then I tried learning Spanish and things like that,
Hmm.
and they're both like they connected with my head, but they didn't connect with my heart or my gut really at all. And then took an improv class. I was living in Indianapolis. I'm just a Midwestern accountant in an improv class, and I walk in, and probably 15 minutes into the first class, I'm like, this is it. Like, this is where I've meant to have been for like 25 years.
Wow.
And it was just a really, really cool experience. To then I started taking everything went online because it was middle of 2020.
Mhm.
And then I started taking like 3 or 4 classes a week in improv and sketch comedy and acting, all that. Eventually moved to Chicago, was doing the Second City Conservatory and a few different things here and performing here now in Chicago. But yeah, it kind of just started with one improv class, and then it just took off from there as a passion.
Yeah, wow. So you had like no foundation, aside from being silly and
Yeah.
goofy and like, just
Yeah. Yeah.
having
Yeah.
having the foundational like characteristics, but like you had no classes in the past of like acting, comedy, or anything along those lines?
No, so in growing up, I was in music. I was in band, and I remember like in like jazz band or something in high school, I'd watch my friends who were in theater and be like, "Oh, I think that's the thing." But I'm also like too anxious to like go and audition in front of all these people and like my friends and like what are people going to think?
Mhm.
And so I think I always had an interest in performing, but was just kind of like too scared to do so. I think at different points. So yeah.
Yeah, wow. Cool. And just to maybe relate a little bit, I during college I took my first acting class and I
Oh,
loved it.
cool.
And then I took a
Yeah.
bunch. I think I took like 7 acting classes in college. And
Wow.
Yeah, and I auditioned for like stand-up comedy stuff on campus. I never got in.
Wow.
Yeah, but like I not a sob story at all. It's like all good.
Sure.
Totally
Yeah.
over it. But yeah, I also I did like a few open mics. So like I love comedy. I also love
Wow.
performance. So but I'm probably not like amazing at it. I'm just kind of like
Sure.
I dabble. So it's
Yeah.
really cool to hear how that clicked for you. Um,
Yeah.
you said that like it was kind of an epiphany moment for you. You took that class and like everything connected. Did you have a certain plan for how you're gonna make that your reality when you realized that you want to do it?
I think slowly, not at first for sure. I knew eventually once I got into this conservatory program at Second City, there was a 9 or 10 month span where one of my friends and I, who was also living in Indiana, we were in the same class and on Saturdays, and so every week we would go from Indianapolis to Chicago and
Wow.
back, which is about a 3 hour drive, and we do that as just part of the program. And I was honestly just waiting for, I was working for Salesforce at the time. I was waiting for them to approve me to move to Chicago.
Yeah.
And because I knew I wanted to move there. And I'm a big fan of like prototyping different things. This sounds like so like thought leadery or whatever. But um, I got this from the book Designing Your Life, which is from like design thinking professors in the business school of Stanford, and they talk about like prototyping different things that you want to do, like big life changes. And so when I moved to Chicago, before I did, I kind of prototyped out living here, where I lived in the neighborhood I wanted to move to, and just like an Airbnb for a week. And then eventually, when I was thinking about doing comedy full time, I prototyped that lifestyle by just like taking a week off of work at Salesforce and
Wow.
just living the comedy life, whatever I thought that meant. And that was, I think, probably the most uh, kind of in the weeds. Like, this is trying to game plan what this transition looks like.
Mhm.
But that was over, the span of 4 years. So it wasn't like right away, but yeah, over time for sure.
Yeah, wow. So that prototype, that week that you described, you would do that occasionally, or the like towards the end of those 4 years, like you decided you'd do that to simulate like full time.
Yeah, towards the end of the 4 years. So it was kind of I've been doing this full time for just over a year. And it was February of last year, 2024. So about 4 years in at that point, where I was really thinking for probably 6 to 9 months prior, like, okay, I really want to do this full time. I was going back and forth and wasn't sure, you know, whether it's going to shake out or not. And then did that prototype week, and that helped a lot. I'm also very indecisive and, as an accountant, very risk averse. So it
Mhm.
also took a big push from my then fiance, now wife, of like,
Wow. Yeah.
hey, uh, you should do this or you're going to regret it. I'm like, you're right. So
Yeah.
that was very, very helpful. But yeah, it's more kind of at each point where I'm thinking of transitioning to something, I guess, is when I try to do it. But it's not exact science, but yeah.
Yeah, no, that's an awesome like framework, if you may. The
Yeah,
prototyping. I
sure.
never thought about
Yeah.
that in the context of like just your own life and all that. So that's really cool.
Yeah.
Um, Speaking of, putting content out there and all that, do you
Yeah.
like what was that first piece of content that you released? And do you remember what you were feeling
Yeah.
when you did that?
Yeah. I was definitely nervous because I was nervous like friends and family would see it, kind of the thing like people normally talk about. And it was, so there's a personality test called the Enneagram, and it was the 9 Enneagram types ordering at McDonald's. And so,
Okay.
getting, I guess, back to like observational humor, it was kind of each of those. The problem was my first few videos I shot at a friend's house because he worked in the office like all day, and I worked from home. So I was like, "Hey, can I use your house to just record because it's empty and I can just?" And he's like, "Yeah, sure." And then, knowing nothing to start, I accidentally deleted like all of the stuff I shot, and it took at that point like 5 hours to shoot like four
Oh man.
videos or something like that because I didn't know anything. And so it's definitely like rough out of the gate, and it took 6 7 months for anything to go remotely viral.
Mhm.
But yeah, it was definitely, there's so much early that I look back on and kind of cringe. I'm like, this is not good.
Yeah.
But yeah,
Where were you working at the time?
yeah. I was at Salesforce. I was still in Indianapolis. Yeah.
What was a day in the life like when you were doing
Mm.
both of these things at the time?
Yeah, this is the point where my former manager should probably now tune out, and just skip ahead. No, I it was kind of a tricky balance, honestly, because I had the blessing of having the flexibility of tech, which was great, and I worked remotely, and so there was a lot I could kind of move around. I tried to best I could record any content over my like lunch hour.
Mhm.
And it's also convenient because just when like lighting is good and stuff like that, that is helpful.
Yeah.
Um, and so I do that, but there would definitely be afternoons where it's like I'm like slacking somebody and like editing a video at the same time, you
Yeah.
know. And so it was not always good. I think early on it was, you know, each were there neither was getting to an amount of time where it was unsustainable to do both. But then as things went on and like comedy stuff grew, and my role at Salesforce was also expanding, and then it's like I have to pick one, otherwise I'm going to go crazy.
Mhm.
So it early on though, it it was pretty doable.
Yeah, okay. I'm just gonna pretend that it's not 11:34 a.m. local time during the workday, and I'm recording a podcast. So,
Right.
yeah,
Yeah.
definitely understand where you're coming from when you describe,
Yeah.
multitasking and all that.
Sure.
That's cool. Yeah, so I guess,
Yeah.
you described that, like, over time, the workload for content creation and comedy kept
Mhm.
increasing, and you were still
Yeah.
working full time. Not to throw shade on your work ethic in, like, in your full-time job, but,
Sure.
like, when it got to more intense points, like, how were you able to pull that off,
Yeah.
right before you decided to, like, just fully pivot?
Yeah. Oh, not well. I no, it was tricky, especially, you know, with accounting, it's so much your job is like month ends and quarter ends and year ends and things like that are just really busy periods. And so periods like that where I was also trying to like get content out there, and I've tried to over the 3 4 years I've been doing content, like post as best I can, like 4 or 5 times a week. And so trying to do that and manage like an accounting calendar was definitely tricky.
Mhm,
And I was pretty stressed by the end. And I think that was kind of another driver behind me just being like, I have to choose one of these.
mhm.
It's just not sustainable otherwise. And so I'm ultimately glad I did. But early, maybe the first year or two, I could kind of get away with probably working less than 40 hours a week in my day job and doing content. I mean, content was pretty reliably about 15 or 20 hours a week.
Okay.
So it, there were definitely weeks where the day job kind of took a back seat and, you know,
Mhm.
content was higher, but yeah.
There's the time management component and, how to navigate that in the workplace and everything. But then there's also even like for you, this is satire about people you work with in general, in a sense.
Yeah.
Obviously anonymized, and it's not like targeting a specific person necessarily.
Sure. Yeah.
Um, was there ever like did you ever feel like there's some sort of friction as an outcome of you like being self-deprecating, but also deprecating of, like, a corporate
Yeah.
environment while you are in a corporate environment? Like, was that ever difficult to navigate?
It never was beyond like what you kind of mentioned at the top of people would be like, hey, like, I'm finding myself somewhat like self-conscious in this meeting of like, you know, because I know what your content is. And at first I was very self-conscious of like more than I think anyone in my life, more than friends or family, like coworkers finding stuff I do because
Mhm,
yeah, a lot of it now is like pretty corporate focused. And I don't know, there's something about like a professional relationship where you just like don't want to mess with, I think. And
mhm,
so eventually though it's like everyone knows, and so that's kind of a nice hurdle because then it's just like okay, whatever, it's out there. You don't feel like you're kind of keeping a secret, but no, nothing where it's ever like detrimental to me, but I definitely had a couple moments where people were like on a meeting with like 20 people or 10 people or whatever are like yeah, so I'm kind of worried about like what Sullivan is, you know, thinking or things like that, but
yeah.
um yeah, it was never, you know, serious or threatening or anything. But yeah.
Yeah, I mean, like, the more optimistic view of that, I do wonder if in a way it also helps like ground people a little bit, like
Yeah,
being able to discuss the sometimes like I don't know, like I don't know what the word is, but like the kind of hilarity associated with our like communication styles at work and everything. Do you feel
yeah.
like it might have disarmed people a little bit and made for an environment that's a little bit more grounded?
I think, yeah, that's a good question. I think it disarmed people somewhat, and what I found was it opened them up to start talking about their hobbies, and so that was kind of cool because I had a coworker who I was pretty good friends with who like started his own candle company. And I was like, that's really cool, and he would talk about that a lot, or and he was already talking about that. It wasn't because I was doing comedy or something like that, but other friends and coworkers who started talking about like uh, more about their weekends and how they were like really engaged with like taking their dog to this park or something like that, where it's just like, oh, it's cool that we're connecting on this level of like things we enjoy and
Mhm.
not just like, hey, did you get the file I sent over?
Yeah.
So I thought that was like, I don't know, that was cool, and I tried to, I don't know, lean into other people's hobbies and interests as best as I could because I felt like they were doing the same for me, and that was really cool.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I
Yeah.
imagine like from like the perspective of how many people resonate with your content, just seeing the numbers of the likes and views and followers,
Mm.
yeah, it looks like a lot of people can relate to things that you're posting. Did you find that surprising when you saw how much reach you were getting?
Oh yeah. I yeah, it still doesn't really make sense. I think to me it reaches a point, any video reaches a point where it just feels like a game, like it feels like a video game where you feel like you're just kind of like moving through different levels of like, oh, this now has 100,000 views. This has 500, whatever it is.
Mhm.
And um the flip side of that is when it's, much lower, you're like, oh, I'm not playing this game well.
Mhm.
And, will this game even be around? And
Yeah.
so if I keep playing this poorly. And so it's it's kind of a mix um in terms of emotion on that front. But uh yeah, I don't think the numbers, I think I reach a point where it's like I've heard before on a podcast talking about fantasy football of all things.
Okay.
Um where somebody's like, when your team does really poorly that week, you're just like, oh, my guys like suck, and like, what is happening? Like, I don't understand it. And then you feel really down on yourself. And then when something good happens, just like, okay, sweet, moving on, like on to the
Yeah.
next one, kind of thing. And you don't let yourself like feel like the good of it. So it's hard to like think about like, I don't think too much of like, oh, that video did really well, and like letting myself like feel that. It's just kind of like, great, on to the next one. And so I feel like that's something I'm trying to almost like be better at, honestly.
Do you feel like the stakes are a lot higher now that you're pursuing this full time?
Oh, totally. Yeah. I think um it's definitely career comedy in general. I mean, content is part of that, where it's, when it's great, it's great. When it's low, it's low. And so just preparing for that, one, financially, but two, even like emotionally, just like, oh, like things are going great. How do we very practically like budget for that, out into the future? And just emotionally, how do we know like, okay, yeah, sure, but the dip's coming. And then when you're in the dip, like, okay, this will get better because it keeps going up and down. You just kind of have to, I don't know, stomach it. But yeah,
Yeah, like I've been
right.
experimenting with trying to be more engaged in like a conversation than in like
Yeah,
interviewing. Uh, but
sure.
then but then like sometimes I'm not yet like fully on top of that, so I'm just gonna see if
Yeah.
yeah, let me see. Uh
Well, can in the interim, can I ask you a question?
oh yeah, yeah, absolutely.
I'm curious, kind of getting back to, you're talking about, you went to Brown, is that correct?
Yeah, I did.
Okay. Yeah. What was the, so taking acting classes at Brown, or in that, could be in that scene, what was it that like resonated with you about that? And do you feel like that's kind of shown itself in other facets now, whether that's in podcasting or your job, etc.?
Yeah, that's a great question. There's a few aspects to that I think resonated with me. One might be like the just being in front of people and doing something, and
Yeah.
yeah, in a way it's kind of like attention seeking. So it's not
Yeah.
necessarily all positive, but in a way like I kind of liked that type of energy.
Yeah.
I'm
Totally.
in front of an audience. I also like the storytelling aspect of it. There's like a
Mm.
character. The character is going through some sort of challenge and needs to take actions in order to overcome those challenges. And
Yeah.
I just found that to be like very interesting, and also being able to step into a character's shoes and understand like the inner working of that character and tell a story through that is something that I found interesting. The buzzword here is empathy, of course, and
Yeah.
that's
That's
how
what
I
I was
discuss acting in a job interview. It's like I can empathize with the customer, but
Yeah, that's a
yeah,
great point. Yeah.
but in reality, I think that just being able to go shift between scenes in different contexts and learn about a character, try to embody that character, and then put together a performance, whether it's individual or even like more fun, like in with a scene
Yeah.
partner or in a group. Um,
Totally.
I found that to be very exciting and very fun, and also very interesting. And then as far as how it might manifest in like my life today,
Yeah.
one is like at work, I'm a product manager, and as you say,
Yeah.
product manager. Uh, I mean, I obviously stole that from your content, but I found that to be very, very spot on.
Love it. Yeah.
So as a PM, I there's a lot of like presenting and talking to people and
Mm.
dare
Yeah.
I say, empathizing with a customer and an end user and all that.
Totally.
So I feel like those skills and that experience could apply there. But also in podcasting, like some of the classes I took were film acting, so like in front of a camera, and also I
Yeah.
took like voice acting as well, aside from just the straight like more
Cool.
traditional theater and like stage acting. And
Yeah.
there are some things of just like being aware of how I'm presented on camera and being able to modulate my voice and stuff like that. I can't say that I'm like an expert on any of those, but it definitely some of that practice and repetition that we did in classes, I feel like carry over. So
Yeah.
that's my general kind of analysis of how acting might be relevant today and why I find it interesting. But aside from all that, like from rationalizing, I just found it to be very fun and like enjoyable. So yeah.
Yeah. It really is. I definitely think the same thing on like the empathy piece. It really does just kind of help you because in acting it's like you're diving so deep into a character and like how do they see the world, how do they see the people around them, where it's like then when you go to talk to the customer, talk to your partner, talk to a friend, whatever, like it's like, oh, I am thinking about like the people in this scene, I'm thinking about how I'm showing up in this scene, my motivation and things like that, and just helps you, yeah, empathize more with like the people around you. It's really really helpful.
Yeah, for sure. And so for improv, I find that to be really awesome as well. Like, what was it that was so unique for you about improv, and maybe even more or comparatively to some of the other types of performance that you've tried out?
Yeah, it was so exciting to me to just be able to walk into a place and just feel like I was fully myself. And not only was that okay, but it was celebrated. Like I call it improv sometimes adult recess because you're kind of just, you're walking onto the playground and there are walls around the playground so that you don't run into the street, right? But you can kind of within the walls of the playground, of the fences of the playground, you can do whatever you want. And that's just really, really exciting and really fun. And so to be able to just kind of like show up as yourself and play the different things you want to play, there are a lot of things that like a lot of life skills too that were just so helpful to learn. The whole main concept of like yes and of like saying, you give me this concept and I'm like, yeah, and let's build on that. That's so helpful in day-to-day life and business, whatever. And just listening is so helpful to learn. So for me it was really helpful and really fun to engage with. And even now when I write, especially the Second City way is kind of using improv to create sketch. So to create the written thing, even when I just write by myself, I'll just talk out loud. I'll improvise because it's what I was trained to do, I guess. And my neighbors probably think I'm insane, but it is helpful for just like me engaging with like, how do I see this scene? How do I engage with writing this? It's just, yeah, it's just a really fun art form.
Yeah, wow. That's awesome. And you described leveraging, but yeah, using
Yeah.
improv in the
Bing.
right. Yeah.
That
Yeah, leveraging
was great.
AI. Um,
Yeah, leveraging
yeah,
AI.
no, but yeah, like incorporating improv in the
Mhm.
writing process. Do you also like do you operate from a script usually, or is there also improv in the performance itself?
Yeah, so I do find improv to be mission critical for getting our ducks in a row, right? And no, I I do. I would say anything that I do content wise is probably 80% written, and then 20% improvise, maybe 15 to 20% improvised, um, depending on the video. So I'll have a script each time and usually stick mostly to that. But usually once I'm doing it, there are things that'll click where it's just like, oh, this is the joke here, or like this doesn't make any sense. Why would I include this? So things that I'm kind of live editing while like improvising. But yeah.
Yeah, so like in your accounting career, was what you were learning from your comedy classes applicable at all?
It was and it wasn't. It was in that it was really helpful for just going with the flow, especially when I first was in improv classes. I was in public accounting, which is pretty demanding in terms of hours. And, there's this concept of busy season where, you're working 60, 70 hours a week and it's just taxing, but it's helpful for kind of dealing with people, whether team members or clients. And my experiences were largely very, very positive. Um, and just like letting things go and not holding them so sacred or taking them so seriously. Now, the flip side of that was, especially once I got to the point where I was a senior associate and kind of like running different audits, where I would have team members come to me like, hey, how do you want to do this? And my perspective was kind of like, oh, like it doesn't matter. It's improv. Like
Yeah.
whatever we say happens, can happen. And so that I think was a detriment, but it was definitely more good than bad in any corporate setting, especially in accounting.
Yeah. Wow. Okay. Yeah, I can see how like when the stakes are high, you don't wanna be too
Yeah,
loose about things. Um,
yeah.
and I mean, speaking of stakes, if I may, when you started recognizing that like your comedy career and your content is really picking up, and that there's potential to maybe commit to that full time, did you feel like you had a harder time showing up to work with like drive and tenacity and
Mm.
rigor?
Yeah, that's a great question and something I like honestly haven't really thought about too much since. Um, yeah, I think there was because I sort of have this thing in comedy where I was like, oh, I'm much more passionate about this, or I'm much more excited about this kind of thing than I am my day job. And it still was the thing where I was like, I like both of these things. I like accounting. I still like accounting,
Mhm.
but it was something where I'd show up each day and like, I'm posting the same journal entry I did last month on the same day I did last month. And part of me is very routine driven and I really like that. But part of me is like, oh, I want to like go and create and build some world that, is on the internet or something. And so that it was hard just to like balance those two feelings towards each kind of like project or each career.
Okay. Yeah, I feel like there's the like more tangible part of time management, but then there's
Mm.
also just like the energy regulation, like emotional connection to what you're doing and all of that. And
Yeah.
all of that piece together, I think seems to be complicated to navigate. For me, like I'm not at a point where my content is very has picked up a lot of momentum to where it consumes me even from like an energy and time management perspective very much.
Yeah.
But I can imagine like even now, I have the full-time job plus like a smaller side project, and it's sometimes
Yeah.
hard to navigate all that. So I can only imagine when things start to pick up, like how much that difficulty increases.
Sure. Well, and even like kind of like the mindset towards each, I think of like, oh, like maybe for you, it's like, right now I'm kind of in like product manager mode but I'm also starting to feel like I'm in podcast mode or I'm thinking about this interview that I'm going to do or like something I'm going to post or different things like that. And it's kind of hard to balance those things at times, or like feel like you're giving them each your full attention is what I found. But
Mhm.
yeah, it's definitely a tricky balance.
Yeah, and I mean, kind of speaking on that as well. Earlier, I think we were recording, but you were mentioning how you go to different people, ask them what they do for a living, and project manager, there's a certain reaction, and then accountant, there's like a more
Yeah,
dull reaction.
yeah.
From an identity perspective, when you like, let's say 5 years ago, let's say before you started taking improv classes and before you started posting content, I asked
Hmm.
you like, "What do you do?" Um, would you just say accountant at the time?
Yeah, I think I would say accounting, and then I'd be like, "Oh, I'm an accountant at RSM, which is the firm I was with," and they'd be like, "Oh, okay, I haven't heard of that," and it's like, "Oh, it used to be McLadry," which is true, and sometimes people had heard of, but usually by that point, people are starting to tune out, and I'm
Yeah.
just like, "All right, what do you do?" you know, I'll listen to like what it is you do because I'm also interested in that, but yeah, now it's kind of the opposite where people will ask. There's almost a shame around like content too, where it's
Mm,
kind of like people I think like, oh, that's your job, that's not just a hobby. And I fear that like judgment, but usually people are just like really cool, they're really interested in it, so it's just like in my head,
mm.
so it almost goes the other way where I'm like, all right, let's stop talking about this. And
Yeah.
and whereas for accounting before, I always like, oh, I want to like share more about myself. There's more to me than like this job or whatever. But yeah, it's kind of gone back and forth, I found.
Was there a threshold where it crossed from you identifying as an accountant to identifying as a content creator or comedian? Or like, were you, let's say you were exactly at the intersection, were you answering like
Mm.
accountant and content? Like, I'm just curious how that kind
Yeah,
of trajectory happened.
I definitely did the thing where I think I clung on to accountant as long as I could
Okay.
because I preferred the interaction of like accounting, cool, and then just like move on. And
Yeah.
that was still like, if maybe a lot of my friends didn't know I did content or stuff like that, or people I was meeting, then it was more comfortable or less anxiety inducing because I was saying like, oh, I'm an accountant, and then I knew how that conversation would go. It wasn't like, oh, sometimes people like, want to talk about like different things of content, and some of that's like really fun to talk about, like the creative process is really fun, and like questions that you're asking about is like really good. And sometimes people are just like, whoa, you have like this amount of followers, or you worked with this brand or something like that. And like, you're not like asking me anything about it. You're just kind of like reacting to it.
Yeah.
And so it's it's kind of more unpredictable than accounting. So I think I clung onto it as long as I could. And then once I was doing this full time, I was like, okay, like you can't still say you're an accountant.
Mhm.
Though I have known people who act and they're like cover careers that they're an accountant for the same
Oh,
reason.
really?
Like they don't want to talk about it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Which is like a very, very funny premise. But yeah.
Yeah. So going into like kind of the tipping point before you decided to go full time,
Mhm.
um, were there like were you concerned about any like so I know that you kind of stress tested
Sure.
this scenario of going full time. You did the prototype. Um, were there particular interactions or people in your life with whom you were concerned about like kind of divulging that you're going to go for this?
Yeah. I think it was vulnerable to talk about, especially with maybe I'll say the older generation. So I'm a millennial, so say like Gen X boomer. Like my parents, like sharing with them, like, hey, this is what I'm gonna do, and like I felt like I kind of had to like prove, like, oh, this is why I feel like I can do this.
Mm,
Or maybe like older friends who are maybe more in that generation, and just again, kind of just all internal, just like the potential shame of like, oh yeah, like this is what I'm doing now. I'm no longer using my degree. So there went that money.
mhm.
But it's kind of like talking to different people, or people who maybe who are in more traditional career paths, who maybe I feared wouldn't understand it as much. Um, but that's where it was more difficult. But once I had those conversations, what I found was like, oh, people are definitely more cool and even like excited and encouraging, um, than I had kind of like worked up in my head. But yeah,
Mhm.
I'd say that was generally kind of the interactions I had.
I'm curious as far as what your life looks like after you made that decision to commit full time.
Mhm.
How is it different?
There's a lot, the good and bad, I feel like, is there's less structure and there's a lot of like creating structure. Whereas before, with a full time job, it was, you work 8 to 5 or whatever. And like I said, like some of that time is at the time is dedicated to content. And now I'm somebody, kind of like I mentioned earlier, I'm very routine driven, I'm very structure oriented. And so I largely like creating like different blocks of time where it's like, okay, now I have the freedom to just like, if I want to go to the gym at 2 p.m. on a Wednesday, I can. And it's actually a better time for me than if I go at 7 a.m. or 6 p.m. or something.
Mhm.
Um, so I like that. It's hard. It does require discipline of not just like, I'll get sidetracked and just like start wanting to like unload the dishwasher or do laundry or things around the house instead
Mhm.
of uh sometimes like the content things I need to do just because it feels productive and I'm just doing the wrong things really. But it's the flip side of that is like it's nice to have that flexibility if I want to, do the laundry or walk the dog or whatever, to do that during the day. So it really, to me, the biggest change of structure, in terms of, the flexibility, which more than anything is definitely a blessing. I don't take for granted at all. But yeah.
Yeah, and as far as also the, I don't know, maybe implicit hypothesis of committing to it full time, yielding more results and also more fulfillment and stuff along those lines. Like,
Yeah.
how do you feel now that you've taken that step, as far as the outcome of that decision?
Yeah. Yeah. I think fulfillment's a good question. I truly, there are so many days where I get to the end of the day and my wife and I are eating dinner and we're talking about our days. And I'm just like, I just really like today. Like it was just really fun. Like this idea was fun to shoot or write or this conversation was fun. Like different things where I really enjoy it and I feel more fulfilled. I feel like I'm doing what I should be doing.
Mhm.
Um, I'm so grateful for. I so I think that's been the big thing. I think results somewhat, I'd say like maybe there's been a slight uptick in growth on social or things like that. But I think more than anything, it just allowed me to have more time to, do content primarily, but then chase different things down with like writing or acting or live shows or different things where I just have more time to, you know, funnel into more of the creative pursuits than just content. Because before it was like mostly just focused on content and like improv shows here and there.
Mhm.
And then now it's kind of trying to make it more well rounded. And I really, really enjoy kind of getting to do a little bit of each of those things.
Yeah, so on the lines of doing more like live shows and everything,
Yeah.
I saw on your social media a little bit about corporate takeover.
Yeah.
I'd love to hear more about that.
Yeah. So it started my writing partner, Callan Harrington, who we call every Friday. One of the joys of my week is we always just get on a call and we just jack around for, an hour. And it's really fun. But we met doing virtual improv together in like 2021. And then eventually just started writing together because he does stand up and improv. And then he actually was doing a podcast for a long time. And so uh, we would give each other feedback on our own like creative pursuits. And then over time, we were just like, what if we did a live show? And so we did one in Columbus, which is where he lives. And then we're doing one. We just booked it in Chicago
Oh wow.
in September. And so we're trying to kind of, I think go a few different places in the Midwest to start and see where that goes. I'm not super interested in doing the like stand up, like, you're gone every night for 9 months, kind of thing. But I
Mhm.
think it would be fun to like tour around and do different cities and can do like mini tours almost, of different places. And it's just so fun. It's a mix of sketch and improv for like 45 minutes. We, we, interact with the audience. There was a lot of crowd work and at least in the first show, they were great and really fun to play off of. So yeah, it's a ton of fun. We just get to be silly for 45 minutes, which, yeah, is great.
I imagine that the type of energy in a live performance versus when you're on camera or creating
Yeah.
content offline, like I
Yeah.
imagine those are very different. Uh,
Yeah.
how do you keep yourself capable of performing so well on both of these different fronts?
Yeah, it's something I've found to be a challenge, honestly, especially since going full time on like content and stuff like that. Because like I work mostly at home. I'll work in a co-working space a little bit or coffee shops a little bit, but I mostly work just by myself, and like I don't have as much social interaction from like talking to coworkers all day or things like that, or different things like that that are really helpful for improv and for performance. So to me, it's just like finding different things where it's like I recently took a new acting class that I was interested in. One for the skill building, but two for just like talking to people and like not
Yeah.
just being by myself all the time. And that kind of thing is helpful. I think even doing like lives on TikTok, I forget about this so often, but that's helpful because a lot of times people would be like, do Scott Synergy, this like corporate manager character, changing his oil or something like that. And then it's like, okay, I'll just like start improvising this or like different things like that. And people are just giving prompts and you have to be on. And that's good training for stage. But more than anything, it's like getting up there is the best training and like just doing as much on stage as I can, which I could definitely be doing a better job of. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
As you were talking about the shift into working by yourself a lot and not interacting as much with like colleagues and everything,
Yeah.
one thing that feels very unique to the type of content that I've seen you release is, as we were discussing, like the how much you need to be observant of people's behaviors.
Yeah.
And I feel like when you're both on the ground in a corporate setting and then you're doing comedic material about corporate environments, you
Yeah.
have access, like you have golden, amazing access to all that like intelligence
Yeah.
that can inform your content. So once you remove that from the equation, what do you do in order to like stay on top of all these, corporate quirks and be able to implement
Yeah.
that in your comedy?
Yeah, it's something I fear. I'm like, will this like fade away over time if I am in it less? And it probably does or has even. But I for me, it's helpful to go and work different places, like a co-working space, like coffee shop. Just get to know different people and just observe. Um, I think too, even listening to like I do a tech CEO character, and even like the types of podcasts I listen to, sometimes those types are on those podcasts. And so
Yeah.
there's still like things that you glean from that then you can still apply in the context of, an all hands meeting or whatever.
Mhm.
So it's definitely, there are times where I'm just like, oh, man, I feel like maybe my content does suffer from me not being on the ground as much as I was. So it is just trying to find like whether it's an interview or overhearing some conversation in a coffee shop or something where it's like you're still getting some sort of inspiration and feeling not like totally out of the loop. But yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I'm curious, like for the podcast that you listen to, is it also from a place of genuine curiosity into like these
Oh
tech
yeah.
trends, and or so it's not just for like material? Because
No.
I'm wondering like how, because you had mentioned that you love accounting and also like you have some satire about corporate life and
Yeah.
everything. So it sounds like you're not doing it in a way that's like derisive of of like
Yeah.
this space. Um,
Totally.
so I was just wondering like the inner workings of how you feel about uh, the industries that you listen to podcasts about and everything.
Totally. I I will listen to a podcast episode that's like Conan O'Brien's podcast, which I love, and then I'll listen to like My First Million, or I'll listen
Yeah.
to Smartless, and then listen to Tim Ferriss or something like that. And I
Mhm.
love them equally. They're just really interesting to me, and I think in comedy in general, that's kind of the half and half, the left brain and right brain of you have to run this thing like a business, otherwise it's just not sustainable,
Mhm.
and you have to be funny and have inspiration there, and try to, more than even just being funny, hit on the truth of a situation, because then the funny will come.
Mhm.
And I find like, yeah, and listening to podcasts is something I like, and I reference all of them way too much, but it's kind of, it is ultimately a balance, and I don't know, any of those kind of things I love listening to.
Yeah, and so you mentioned a little bit about the business side of what you do.
Yeah.
Uh, Can you maybe go a little bit more into that? I anecdotally I read a little bit about some brand deals that you had, and
Yeah,
I've seen some like some stuff that you post that seems like partnerships and everything. But
yeah,
as like a very early stage podcaster, I have no
sure.
businesses interested in me sponsoring them.
Yeah.
So I'm curious to just learn more about how that works and how you start making money as a creator and everything.
Yeah, so much of my income is from working with brands directly on brand deals and partnerships on content. And that's actually something I'm trying to figure out right now is what are the different income streams, whether that's writing for different things, whether that's acting in different things that I feel like can exist beyond just like brand interactions. Because brand deals are great, and they're really helpful, and just and fun to do. But it kind of starts, at least for me, where like brands started reaching out, and like the first one was working with Delta Airlines, and they were great. They're really fun to work with. We got to shoot in person, which was really fun, in O'Hare here at the airport,
Wow.
and that was great. But so much of that early on, you're doing all the like back end like paperwork and invoicing and billing and you know, negotiating, pitching yourself. Like, so then eventually I signed with an agency that handles like all the admin type stuff. And they're amazing. Because then I can just focus more on the creative side of things. And so it's like, they get their cut and whatever, but that was an important part for me. And just like they can handle so much more kind of tonnage of like pitching different brands and negotiating with them and things like that. So that's helpful. But yeah, early it was just me fielding emails of just like, hey, this brand is interested. And you get so many that's like some like hi and then copy pasted like username like at Sully Finlay. And then there's like some like super janky like negotiation or agreement that's listed in a product that doesn't make sense in any year.
Mhm.
Where you're just like, okay, this is going straight spam. But um, yeah, it early on it's just kind of, for me it was just like fielding those, and it's another one where it's just like it feels like it's part of the game where it doesn't feel real, and you're just like, what, me? Like
Yeah.
I'm just kind of like jacking around online, uh, but yeah, I'd say that's kind of how it worked early on.
Yeah, wow. I mean, that sounds exciting. And having your first deal be with Delta, that's pretty huge. So very
They were
cool.
great. They were really fun to work with. They kind of just let me improvise and yell as a dad in O'Hare, so that was great.
Yeah. Wow. That's awesome. Sounds like an awesome experience. Uh,
Yeah.
so I know that you like I saw online at least that you have like an LLC. Um,
Mhm.
it was when do you need to start doing that like as a
Oh
creator?
yeah, yeah. I started. I mean, there was definitely conversations, especially once I started doing this full time. Um, that I was having a lot of conversations with my financial advisor, just like, hey, I don't know this that well, and you're an expert. But I started the LLC probably around the time I went full time, um, and just for tax reason and protection, legally.
Mm,
Um, I I found that to definitely be helpful, versus just kind of letting everything follow through on my own. Um, but yeah, it was, I think, around the time I went full time.
okay, cool.
Yeah,
So it's not that like the moment you start generating revenue, like it's necessarily important to have a
yeah.
business. Or-
I was probably about 6 to 8 months into generating income, and
mm,
honestly, I probably should have done it before. But I don't think it's something you have to do right away. If people who are much smarter about this listen to this, feel free to correct me in your head. But I or online, feel free. But I that's, I guess, how it played out for me. But yeah,
Okay, cool. Yeah, so we'll take this specific clip and I'll share it as best practices for
yeah, yeah,
running
yeah.
a business. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, and tag like every major financial person in it. Like I want at JP Morgan Chase, at Merrill Lynch. Like everyone should just like, at Dave Ramsey. He needs to know.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, no, I am by no means an expert in these things. So that's just how it worked out. But yeah,
Cool. Yeah. Awesome. On the more creative side, you were mentioning like that you like talking about creative process, and I just
yeah.
wondering what your creative process is like, and also even if you can like walk me through from the moment that you recognize something that is like high potential for like material all the way through delivery, like what, without sharing maybe secret sauce if you don't want to go into like
Yeah,
your,
sure.
your proprietary
Yeah.
like approach, but I'm just curious how that is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
For me, so it's kind of like I mentioned, um, in the mornings, I write every morning. It's just when my brain is fresher and before it's like kind of tainted by your day. And then you're worried about like the more left brain stuff of like, oh, I need to do this and I need to do this. And then this is next on my to-do list. It's helpful for me to write in the morning before I'm getting busy. Um, I will write, I'll say like out loud, like I'll start just talking. I'll start having a, like maybe if my idea is, let me think. You asked me how I like living on my street. And it's like, I'll just start talking where I'm just like, yeah, it's pretty good. We're a little far from the lake. But it's the commute's pretty good. We're actually only like, I want to say 3.5 minutes from the train. So that's actually like a lot better than my old place. And so like I'll just start talking out loud and like writing down whatever that I think is good or what's not good. And then if there are things just like out in the wild, I have like the running like jokes log on my like notes app that has gotten um, long. And so it's like the most recent thing I had written on here um, was when Midwestern babies come out of the womb, if they're twins, are they like, oh, sorry, gonna sneak right past you? Uh, that's something I probably thought of in like the grocery store line or something, but I don't know what to do with that, outside of like it's a bit for like stage or something. But um, yeah, I'll like, keep a running list of like stuff like that where I'll just figure out eventually like what I want to do with it if I remember that's there. But yeah.
Yeah. Wow. That's hilarious. Yeah. My one thing that I don't do anything with is I have a Google Doc called Endless Project where every time I
Mm.
think of a pun, I put that pun in there. And I
Oh,
think
that's fun.
I'm at like 1,100 puns at the moment. And it's been like going
Oh
on
my
for 2 years.
gosh.
Yeah. And
Wow.
actually, and my, 100 or so followers on Instagram or wherever you watch me can
Sure.
maybe, if you're curious, you can look. I have I have an Instagram that has like 4 posts. It's called like Wits and Pieces, which is like a pun on bits and
uh
pieces.
yeah,
And
yeah,
I've posted like 4 of those puns on there. So
yeah.
yeah, I
I
mean,
love that.
yeah, so I could resonate with having like a dump of every intrusive
Yeah,
thought or like potential
totally.
idea that you have, but yeah, I'm not on your level at all. So it's cool to hear how you do that.
Oh, 1100 that's massive tonnage in terms of how many. That's impressive. So yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, cool. So it's cool to kind of like dig into how you do things. I wonder like who are comedians that you really like?
Oh yeah. I always say I have kind of like a Mount Rushmore of comedians that I one really like and two that I've found influential. First would be John Mulaney. Next would be Will Ferrell. Next would be a single but like double-headed bus for Key and Peele. That was like all of my
Oh,
college.
I love that.
Um, and
Yeah.
then last would be Shaquille O'Neal. Not a
Yeah.
comedian, but I think he's so funny. Uh,
Yeah.
and as a kid, he was like when I was a kid, I was like tall and fat and was playing basketball, and I felt pretty goofy. And I was like, okay, who is a player out there who plays like me? As if like they're modeling their game after me, a 6-year-old in Illinois. And and immediately I was like, oh, Shaquille O'Neal is like so funny and it's
Yeah.
just dominant. And so he was an early inspiration of just like, oh, this guy's hilarious. But yeah.
Yeah. Wow. Cool. I'm actually just watching right now. There's like I don't know if it's niche or very well known at this point, but there's like a show that Shaq and Allen Iverson are in right now of like
Really?
it's about like reviving Reebok or something. That's not the
Huh.
name. Maybe that should have been the name, but like it's
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
basically yeah, cuz Shaq and AI were one of the first like people to like athletes to sign with Reebok and to like really take it
True.
to the next level. And
Yeah.
now Shaq took on the president role and AI, he hired him as the VP for Reebok. And
Wow.
there's like a whole show about how they're trying to like bring Reebok back to the top. So maybe just take
Wow.
that as a recommendation. But even
Yeah.
even
Oh,
there, like
definitely.
yeah, even
Write
there,
this
it's
down.
like his comedy. It's as if it's at this point like just very subtle and unintentional, but he's just
Yeah,
like his whole
totally.
demeanor is so hilarious. So
It's
yeah, I
so
love
good.
Jack. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, and Key and Peele are I love their stuff. I basically
so
just
good.
can't stop watching it. So yeah.
Yeah,
Um cool. As far as like your vision for your material and for your work,
yeah.
whether it's what you currently have going on or like any big dreams that you might have for your comedy career, uh yeah, could you share anything about like where you see yourself taking your life and your career?
Yeah, I think for me, more than anything, I Conan O'Brien says this thing a lot on his show where he says, "I just know that I need to be making stuff, and like whatever stuff is, um, I just need to be making." And I really resonate with that. Where I think that is kind of the overarching feeling of like I just need to make stuff. And so right now, in the short and medium term, it's content, it's more of corporate takeover and seeing where we can take that show. It's figuring out is there kind of a corporate side to what I do, like in terms of events and offsites or things like that, and doing maybe that's with corporate takeover, maybe that's by myself, I don't know. Um, and then the longer term thing is like, yeah, I really want to act and write in shows and film, and that's like the moonshot, like less achievable, but just dream kind of like goal. Um, and so I don't know. That's where I wanted to head. I don't see content as being my like forever thing.
Yeah.
I really enjoy it right now, but I think I would the goal would be that that would give way to more like on camera type stuff. Um, but yeah, that's kind of generally where I see it going.
Yeah, wow, that's awesome. And I feel like it's really cool to see new pathways into acting pop
Yeah,
up now that there's people have platforms and can just kind of decide that I'm an actor and pursue it and then put themselves out there, and you have such a great portfolio. So yeah, I
thanks.
wonder if you have any takes on that. Like do you feel like what used to require maybe an MFA and some like very official
Mm.
training, now the doors have opened a little bit wider for people to come in through different angles?
Oh, I have takes. There's
Okay.
your soundbite. No, I just kidding. I No, I do have takes. A soapbox I'll go on often is that I think there there are ways in which Hollywood could be more efficient, which is like such a tech thing to say, I feel like. But
There's
where and
AI.
I think we right, yeah, yeah. There's the downside. There's the part creatively where like I don't even want to touch AI, and I don't want it to touch the creative space. Um, but I mean, I use it a lot for like admin type stuff, and I think it's great for that. But I think even like how people audition and how they're cast and things like that. Like why don't we have a platform that's better than what's out there as far as like connecting the casting director and talent, and especially now I think I've started to see more friends who are creators like get cast in commercials and stuff like that, where it's really exciting for me. And I hope like that could be a potential path for me, uh, because I think that makes a lot of sense. In the creator economy, it's a bunch of people who are just making stuff, and a lot of us have some sort of acting or improv or comedy background. Yeah, we might not have like MFAs and stuff like that. Some people do. And I don't think that's bad. I think that if anything, it helps. But I do think like there are more pathways that are opening up and should open up over time, if kind of like the industry is willing to welcome them with open arms. And I think it started to.
Yeah.
So I find that encouraging.
Yeah, no, that's amazing. So like, given that this is one of your goals, have you been putting yourself out there and like auditioning for things? Yeah, I'm just curious what that's been like for you.
Yeah, that's kind of the I'll say 3 to 6 month goal of like starting to do more of that. So I've started taking more acting classes to kind of prepare for that, because I feel like that's where I'm probably weakest. Is
Okay.
I feel like I can write better than I can act. My writing is in no means by no means perfect, but it's more of a skill, and I've trained in it more than I have acting. Um, in acting, for me, I'd say, yeah, my goal is in the next probably 3 to 6 months, auditioning more and putting myself out there more. And also just trying to think too of like, what what would it look like to create some sort of platform? This is my like big hairy audacious goal or whatever of like, what would it be like to create some sort of platform where it's like it's more centralized or it's more creator friendly or things like that for um, auditioning, but that more practically in the short term is, yeah, trying to audition more. So coming soon, hopefully. I need to do that. That's a good reminder. But yeah.
Yeah. I'll send you weekly nudges.
Yes,
Yeah,
that's
stay on
great.
it.
Welcome.
Yeah. That's awesome. Really cool. Actually, so I graduated from undergrad in May of last year, and I started my job
Cool.
like late August. So I took like the longest period that I could, which is 3 months, to kind
Mm,
of do other things. And actually,
yeah.
during those 3 months, I created an Actors Access account and
Wow.
auditioned for like a ton of things. None of them worked
Yeah.
out, but the auditioning was actually super rewarding, and I found it to be like difficult and frustrating process, but also a great way to like have that outlet of acting, even if it's not like the
Yeah.
end of the role. Um, so yeah, it's from like a very amateur perspective. I'm by no means like a professional actor or anything like that.
Sure.
I found that to be like a really interesting process to try to go through. But yeah.
Oh, sure. Yeah, and probably even helpful for like, I think any sort of like on camera rep, whether that's, content or acting or like now for like podcasting where it's like it's probably helpful in this, just like there's a performance aspect of this, there's like collaboration to it where yeah, I feel like kind of auditioning is probably helpful for that kind of thing.
Yeah, I'd like to hope so.
Yeah.
Definitely. Thankfully, I can edit out the bad parts in our conversation.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, where
Sure.
I completely flop and my brain shuts off. But
Yeah,
yeah, that's also, I guess, part of like acting on camera, which editors can do some magic as well. But yeah,
sure. Yeah.
yeah. So you like took a pretty big pivot from accounting to content, comedy, and being an independent business owner. And like you described kind of the anatomy of how that worked. I imagine that maybe whether it's people listening or just not even listening, but just people in general, look at that and think to themselves, wow, if only I could make that a reality for myself. Like there's
Mm.
something that I'm super passionate about. I'm not doing that full time. Maybe I'm moderately happy with my job, but I wish I could just go and do that thing more seriously. For people who are in that boat, could you maybe share some wisdom or advice or just words of direction or encouragement or whatever it is?
Yeah, I can try to offer encouragement at least. I think it's to me, I definitely encourage people to just try things and maybe none of them will ever work. And like for me, it's like I tried learning guitar and actually sometimes that still helps because I know enough chords where like I can use it in a video or things like that. Now, Spanish, I tried learning and forgot most of it. So that's not super helpful now. But just trying different things where it's like, oh, I think I like this, or maybe I want to like start traveling more. Like, is that a thing that I'm interested in? And just trying to find different hobbies. Whether they could become careers or not. And for like people who have an idea of like, oh, this is the thing I think I want to explore more, I think you know, I think consistency and quality go a really, really long way. And so in content, what that looked like was posting at least every day. And there was a stretch where I was like multiple times per day before that like happened to quote unquote coincide with like right before like my first video went viral, quote unquote. And so it's
Mhm.
I think, the consistency of that is what matters. Sometimes it takes a while. And then just focusing on quality and figuring out who are the people I can talk to and learn from. I think relationship is so big more than anything. Just like learning from different people and connecting with different people and their experiences. Um, how can I focus on consistency, quality, and relationships? I think that goes a long way, more than anything.
Wow. Okay. Awesome. I appreciate that insight and also very applicable to me. Not necessarily the whole notion of like taking a leap and leaving my current job, but also
Yeah.
definitely taking this passion project that I'm doing more seriously. And whenever
Mhm.
you say consistency, I think it's one of those things. There's like the cliche of some things are simple but hard. And I think
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
whenever I get that nudge or reminder of consistency matters, I'm like, damn, like I feel guilty because I know that like being consistent is such a straightforward concept, but especially
yeah,
when you have other commitments going on, it's like for me at least, it's so hard to be consistent. Um,
yeah,
was there anything that helped you be consistent when you got started, or like at least when you started to gain momentum?
yeah. Best I could, I tried to turn off the switch of like, oh, what are people going to think of this? You know, especially like putting content out there where it's like theoretically anyone could see it. For a while, it's like, you know, 200 people see it,
Mhm.
but so it doesn't really matter. But even still in your head, you're like, oh, what if people see this and they think less of me, or, you know, whatever. And so it's just trying as best you can to turn that down. It's hard to turn all the way off, but turn it down. And I think too, just having set kind of short, medium, long term goals of like, this is where I want my account to be, or this is what I want different videos to do, that kind of remind you of like, hey, this is what I'm driving towards. And I don't get there if I'm not doing the work. Like, if
Mhm.
I skip out on that, then I guarantee I won't meet any of these goals. And
Right.
so I think kind of having those two things and getting back to like talking with people, I think is so helpful. Like talking with other creators was really helpful for me, and just like, oh, this is how you got here. Like that's really cool. Like it's inspiring, you know, to talk to
Mhm.
different people and hear about their creative journey. So I think that that kind of resonates for any hobby, any passion, any, you know, career that somebody's considering. It's just like talking to people within it is so critical.
Yeah, and I think this is such a great excuse for me to talk to other people because I got to talk to you and you have so much experience. So yeah, I appreciate
Thanks.
you being willing to do that. But yeah, we discussed like a lot of things about your journey, about your process, and just more generally about pivots and everything. Is there anything that we haven't discussed that you would like to bring up?
I think I would just kind of like double click. There's another one. Bingo.
Yeah.
On uh, just the idea of emphasizing relationships. I've found that especially as I've, you know, worked for myself, and it can be isolating, but just figuring out ways of just like connecting with people. One, just like hanging out with friends more, and just like being with people for the sake of being with people, and
Mhm.
like because you like them. Um, but two, also just finding people um, who can teach you different things, or maybe you can teach. Like there's just knowledge sharing. I think is so helpful in this kind of career. So yeah, I think that'd be probably what I'd zero in on.
On the matter of relationship building, when I started getting people to interview for the podcast, I was at like completely nothing. I had nothing as
Yeah,
like online or
yeah,
anything. So I had to kind of cold message and shoot my shot. But then eventually, there's a little bit more momentum where I could just tell them, "Hey, I spoke to this person," and like
yeah,
maybe that
yeah,
can help me like make a case for them to spend an hour and a half to talk to me. It's still not a strong case. I still have very little followers, but like nevertheless, like some
yeah,
momentum. So when
yeah.
you were building these relationships earlier on, how did you recognize the people you should be reaching out to? And then how did you like actually get them to engage with you? Like, what was that like for you?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think for me, there's a guy uh, who I knew from an improv class that I was in, who ended up kind of blowing up on TikTok, like right at the sweet spot of like early to mid 2020. And I just knew him from a class because I was in the class. And I guess like that also speaks to just like training and like, you know, doing the different things you need to do. But
Mhm.
where I just talked with him, like, hey, what was your content journey like? Because like this is something I'm interested in, kind of in addition to improv. Like I had no idea it would be the full time at some point, but in addition to like the different stage things. And he was just really helpful in kind of, you know, having that conversation early. Or for me, it's been different people that I'm like mutuals with. Like we follow each other on TikTok or Instagram. And so I'm like, okay, we'll like comment on each other's stuff, or sometimes we'll DM each other about different things of each other's we think are funny, and like things like that, where those kind of people that I'm like, even now, it's like, sure, like I've grown some, but I just like having the conversation, just hear from other people who are creative and like how they approach different things, because it's just really fun. Um, so it's just people where you feel like you've started to build somewhat of a rapport with. but yeah, I think early there's the cold approach of like, yeah, for me, it was maybe like talking to my improv instructors or, talking to different people who's like a friend who used to be acting or things like that, where it's just like, what are the little things I can pull from, these conversations and people I just like want to talk to anyway.
Mm.
Um, so it's kind of starting with like my immediate circle. And then once I started to know people from like a class or from a show or whatever, just talking to them kind of more beyond that.
Okay, awesome. Yeah, that's super helpful. And like, I got the impression when we were speaking very towards the beginning about
Mhm.
like that first improv class that you took, that there was almost a little bit of serendipity involved, and like certain
Mm.
circumstances in your life happened. You went into an improv class, you loved it, and it clicked. Do you think that in the absence of that specific moment and those circumstances, you would have still ended up where you are today? Looking back, how much
Yeah.
significance you attribute to that specific, like, pivotal moment?
Yeah, I think I attribute a good amount of significance to it. I'm somebody who, faith is really important to me. I believe like, God was kind of guiding me through that process and to where it was. It's like, hey, this is how I made you to be, and what I think, you know, um, what I see you doing long term. I just steering me towards that, like me not even being able to find it on my own. I think, but I I think that is probably the biggest factor for me. And so I think, if it wasn't that specific improv class, I think there would have been something else in comedy that would have clicked. But yeah, I think something divine to that. And I think just, yeah, kind of how I'm wired, how I'm made. I think that would have connected with some other comedic avenue in some shape or form.
You have a huge following and everything, but, like, if someone's listening to this and isn't familiar with your work, is there anything
Yeah.
specific you would like them to keep an eye on or to follow?
Sure. Yeah, follow me at Sully Finlay on all platforms on TikTok and Instagram. Recently new to LinkedIn. I was holding out for a while and then I got suckered in. No,
Yeah.
happy to be there as well. I'll post on there or my site, sullyfinlay.com, about upcoming shows with Corporate Takeover or other shows, or any other silly things that are upcoming. So yeah, that's the main place to find me.
Cool. Yeah, this was really fun. I really appreciate your time. Thanks so much.
Awesome. Thanks, Amit. Appreciate it.